number of participants. I see the number of participants climbing up, and I can scroll through and see, familiar names and faces. It's always great to reconnect. And then also seeing a number of new people. And thank you for joining us today. I look forward to following up with many or all of you. And appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about the municipal infrastructure pilot projects we have. Just make sure that Rose, we're all set to start.
Just one moment.
Yeah, we'll just give another moment for a few people to join. So we have numbers still going up. Again, great to see. Also, just seeing people from all across the state as well. Very, very exciting to see. Thank you all for joining us today. So this is an opportunity to hear from local partners that are engaging in municipal infrastructure projects. We're featuring pilot projects that informed our municipal infrastructure program. We're gonna keep this to an hour, but if there are some deep dive questions and the conversation's still going, may be able to keep people on. But really, this is just an opportunity to be introduced to them, get an overview, and hear a little bit about what went into shaping our municipal infrastructure program. So there's an opportunity for knowledge sharing, share some insights from existing projects. People have experience doing this in New York. As you were hopefully notified already, this session is being recorded, and we'll share the recording and these slides after the session. If you have questions that you'd like us to get to, I'll be doing some follow-up with the panelists. But if you have questions, you can put them into the Q&A section of Zoom, and you can vote on those, and that'll help highlight the ones that we want to use for the limited amount of time we have. Other questions may be able to follow up on, and we'll share some contact information at the end of the session. Look for important links and references in the chat window. And then, this is not really a forum about the municipal infrastructure program request for applications. If you've got questions about that, we would like you to send those to mip@esd.ny.gov, and we're going through questions as we receive them, and that's a way to make sure that everybody has access to that same information. Next slide, please. I think many of you are familiar with New York's ConnectALL initiative. I'm Joshua Breitbart. I lead ConnectALL for the New York State Broadband Office, part of Empire State Development. It's a Governor Hochul's $1.3 billion initiative to bring affordable, reliable, high-speed internet service to all New Yorkers, build a robust broadband marketplace, close the digital divide. We have 5 signature grant programs that the governor announced, and the focus today, of course, is on the context of the municipal infrastructure program. Next slide. So the municipal infrastructure program has the goals of investing in publicly owned and publicly controlled networks to connect tens of thousands of locations with future-proof open access infrastructure, and really enable broadband to be more like a basic utility, as many consumers now expect or hope it can be. And we are prioritizing projects that address unserved and underserved locations across the state, and meeting ConnectALL's mandate as well to develop a robust, equitable broadband marketplace. This is supported by $228 million from American Rescue Plan's Capital Projects Fund, administered by the Treasury Department. We are incredibly appreciative of the Treasury Department, our partners at the Capital Projects Fund, for the partnership in doing that, as well as, of course, our congressional delegation that enabled this federal funding to advance this and much of our ConnectAll work, and our state legislature that has also supported ConnectALL's programs, including the funding that went into the pilot projects you'll hear from today, and really have incorporated this municipal infrastructure effort as a key component of the mandate to ConnectALL. And I want to acknowledge, I know we're joined by staff from a number of offices. I may not have all of it given the number of participants we have, with over 140, now 141 participants in the Zoom. But I know we have staff from Senator Hinchley's office, Senator Scoofus's office, Senator Webb. And again, we've had many other supporters of these projects and this effort, and greatly appreciate the state legislature's work here. And with that, next slide. I wanted to briefly ask a couple people have been supportive of this effort over a long period of time to speak to it. And although you hosted an event recently that I was at, which really spoke to how this is a growing field across the country. And Otho Kerr is the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Community Impact Investing for the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Otho, I'd like you to just make some remarks if you would.
Yeah, Josh, thanks for having me here. We are fully supportive of the work that you all are doing at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, because we are an organization, as you know, that's focused on supporting an economy that works for all, and I underscore all segments of society. What we want is for every individual and every household to have equitable opportunity to access to the economy and to benefit from the fruits of the economy. And we believe that closing the digital divide helps us reach that aspiration. Closing the digital divide allows for healthier, more economically vibrant communities. And we want to be supported by providing research and being an objective convener that can identify potential capital providers and financial solutions to fund these efforts. So we look forward to supporting you, ConnectALL, and everybody on this call going forward.
And again, thank you so much for the convening and support that you provided. And then also Bill Farber, who's again been a great champion of the work of ConnectALL, the Director of Intergovernmental and External Affairs for the Adirondack Association of Towns and Villages. Bill?
It's great to be able to participate in this, Josh, and it's wonderful to see the turnout that there is. I've worked at all levels within New York State on this. I've worked on it in a statewide scale, at technology, regionally, county level, town level. And this is a key piece to this. I mean, we're going sort of back to some of the work that we did early on in the broadband field with David Selway. This gives us some municipal ability to direct service in a way that it can provide holistic utilization of technologies, from emergency services thinking to cellular to broadband. And it's just a wonderful opportunity. Some of the pilots are extraordinarily powerful. We've worked a lot in our area with Dank, and kudos to the ConnectALL office for moving this forward. It's really exciting to see these opportunities start to come to fruition with this level of funding. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. Thank you both. Now I'll just give a brief overview of these pilot projects, and I also want to acknowledge our partners at the New York Power Authority that led implementation of these pilot projects. You can go to the next slide, Rose. And in particular, Ali Mohammed over there at NYPA coordinated this effort in Shenango County of the village of Sherburne, the towns of Diana and Pitcairn and Lewis and St. Lawrence County, respectively, and the town of Nichols in Tioga County. These have different attributes, as you'll hear. You're seeing, they have somewhat different scale. 1,800 locations in Sherburne, about 500 between Diana and Pitcairn, and over 800 in Nichols. But this was completed under budget and on a wonderful timeline that allowed us to draw great lessons as we shaped the municipal infrastructure program. Again, we wanted to create this opportunity to go a little deeper into them today. You can go to the next slide, and I'll introduce our panelists. So you'll hear from Mayor William Acey from the village of Sherburne. Jeff Gasper, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Southern Tier Network, who will be speaking to the project in Nichols, and David Wolf, Director of Telecommunications for the Development Authority of the North Country, will speak to Diane and Pitcairn, and they're joined by their colleagues who can speak to some of the technical aspects. And again, if folks want to continue on and really do a deep dive, or if the questions get to a very specific or detailed technical level, I think we will able to hold the conversation going past the hour. But again, want to make sure that we get through this overview in the time that we have. So with that, I will hand it to Mayor Acey to give us an overview of the project in Sherburne. Mayor?
Thanks, Josh. And I too am pleased to be here today, and I'm really pleased to have completed this project. It's been a great project, and we've had it on the horizon for a while, but we haven't been able to get there until recently. And I want to thank the ConnectALL group and the pilot that helped us, get this thing done, because they were very instrumental in helping us. We looked at this for quite a few years. One of the drivers was we're in a very uncompetitive market, and in some places, people were dealing with dial-up and 5 megabits of bandwidth, which was really, I didn't think about it until we started this project, but I heard from a lot of folks that have been struggling with low speeds for a very, very long time, and it was hard for them to operate even in their own households. So for us, it was something that we really wanted to deliver over our electric network, especially because, our goal was to become an electric company of the future with, being able to control our grid and, do load management and all those kinds of things. So with that, by creating the competition, we also were able to lower, annual costs for people too, because, as a public official, our costs are fixed. Labor is fixed and going up. Benefits are fixed and going up. This was a way of trying to lower the overall cost to our senior citizens who are struggling with fixed income, as well as, folks that are, just home every day trying to, make money to pay their property tax. So it seemed like it was a win-win-win for us everywhere we looked. And oh, by the way, we were able to offer open access, with 1 gig of service at a pretty reasonable rate. So, but I also want to introduce, because I know we're on a tight schedule here, Travis Dubois. Travis is the electric superintendent and now head of our fiber project. And when we started discussing this, I made a trip. I was in Denver. I made a trip to Ammon, Idaho, and I hopped over the hill from Denver to see Ammon's network, which was run by Entry Point, and I was very impressed with their open access system. And that's kind of how we got to where we ended up. With that, I'll introduce Travis, let him speak a little bit and talk about it from a technical standpoint.
Good afternoon. I want to speak to the open access aspect and what that means. There are really 3 types of open access networks. The first open access model is where a municipally owned infrastructure and the municipality can then choose the ISP that's providing the service to the customers. The second type is, again, a municipally owned network. More than one ISP, but the provisioning, the ability for the customer to switch from one provider to the next is manually performed with a network administrator. The third type, and this is what Sherburne has chosen, is what we've referred to as a true open access model. And what does that mean? The village and municipality owns the infrastructure, or owns the fiber, or owns the road, and allows any internet service provider to operate on it simultaneously, and that system is all automated. So the goofy analogy is you get packages delivered to your home from FedEx or UPS or whomever. And if any of those service providers had to build a road to deliver a package to your home, that would be silly. And if you wanted to change from FedEx delivering packages to your home to UPS delivering packages, and the only way to change was for them to build a paved road to your home, that's even crazier. Well, that's what much of the telecom and broadband infrastructure is like in the US. What we have built in Sherburne is a municipally owned road. Our customers pay the village for the fiber connection to their home. And we have presently 2 ISPs operating on our network. And through a dashboard that we offer to our customers, they can log into it. They can instantly change from one ISP to another. Each of those ISPs has different speed packages. For instance, a 100 by 100 plan for $10 or a 1 gig for $30. We even have through our system, some customers are subscribed to 2 ISPs simultaneously. That means if they're working from home and one ISP goes down for whatever reason, they can switch to the other ISP and have full carry on about their business. Obviously, if the fiber goes down to their home, that's upon us to fix the 2 ISP aspect to that doesn't fix that. But there have been times when ISPs have gone down for whatever reason and our customers have been able to switch. What this also has done is brought competition, as the mayor has spoke to. In the past year, we've had 2 price reductions from our ISPs on our network. I'm probably getting out of time, so I'll stop there and thank you all for your time and thanks for listening.
And I just want to know, if you haven't seen how an open access system like this works, it's pretty remarkable because you just go on your screen and you can kind of click and change providers. It's basically, that's the system that it supports. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Travis, for that overview. Let's go to our next slide and next presenter. Jeff, please go ahead.
All right, thank you, Josh, and thanks for the ConnectALL office for 2 things. One, having STNB part of the pilot projects. We learned a lot. I think everybody did. And thanks for holding this session as we get asked a lot of questions from everybody about how it worked, how we did it. This is a great forum for hearing everything. So I'm joined by Ben Rydzuski. Ben is our operations manager and really was the tipping point to get this thing off the ground, running, and throughout the project to have it a success. So I'm going to have Ben chime in on the Q&A segment because that's really what he's good at, is answering questions. So I'm going to have him talk through a lot of the details about our project are up on the screen, so I'm not going to regurgitate. What I wanted to talk about is really, I talked to the residents and the town officials about, if you had 1 minute to talk about this project from your perspective, what would you say? And some of the things that came out of that was we have high-speed broadband open access networks in remote areas of their town, village, county that they never dreamed would be there. It just still blows their mind that it's there. So that was one big thing. Community response has been extremely positive. When we ask our customers, our residents and businesses what impacts it's had, it's opened up work from home entirely. They were completely void of that. We had residents that used to have to drive 30, 40, 50 miles to work can now work from home. It's huge. It's opened up their real estate market. Homes are being more sought after because of the service. It's retaining their values and if not raising their values. So it's a positive selling and buying point for anybody that's looking in the area. The other thing it's helped on is recruitment. So when the COVID hit and Lockheed Martin nearby started having everybody work remote, they were looking for people that had access to high-speed internet, the right kind of technical and business knowledge, and we're still in the general area. So it really helped from a recruitment perspective for those residences to be actually on Lockheed Martin's radar screen for jobs and employment. And then the other thing that I wanted to hit upon is emergency services. So this has really impacted the area for enabling emergency services in the area. There's, just like a lot of other areas in New York State, terrain is the big factor. So by having this expanded into areas where there is little to no cell phone coverage, and people can use this broadband to communicate in form of emergency, where emergency can reach residents, was a huge thing. So that's what I heard from the community members and the legislators and people in the community. The one last thing I'll leave with is where we go from here. So we've had a lot of interest in nearby areas. When we set up our website for initial interest, obviously we got people from nearby towns and villages that were extremely interested. So we are excited to keep growing and building the network. The revenue that we see off our pilot, we're a nonprofit, we turn that right into the network again. So we're going to continue expanding our services little by little to reach as many, if not everybody, that we can within the entire geographical footprint. So we'll continue to do that and grow with the positive response we've got, and we look forward to answering any questions at the end.
Thanks, Jeff. And since you have this image here on your slide, the map on the lower left, can you just explain how that works? And because what it looks like is you were building to address these unserved areas sort of outside the center of town, and in doing that, to have a cohesive project, you also wound up building in areas where there was some existing service. And that's can you just talk a little bit about how you decide to have that coverage area like that?
Absolutely. So yes, anything in yellow is what we call it was a spectrum served area, and anything in green was completely unserved. So what we did is, as the project went along, and Ben was key on this, is we started tracking take rates on quote unquote served spectrum areas and completely unserved areas. We wanted to get a better idea what the take rates would be in those areas, the cost to reach those residents compared to the take rate. And just to let you know, I think it's very hard to see because of the size. Those take rates were from early October of last year. So they've actually climbed as we've, of course, continued along, but this is kind of the last infographic I had. But what we did is we made our backbone, we have about a 750 mile middle mile network. Our backbone already went through areas of Nichols, and our first customers that we could turn up quickly, we were able to overlash our existing fiber with the fiber to the home, and turn up our pop in the market, so that we could start actually servicing customers within about 90 days of even project inception. So that really kind of got us off the ground. It was what we had to do. The challenge there was to explain to the residents that we were going to get all the way out to every home. It just would take time. So by having a number of community engagements to let them understand what the rollout was. Ben had, every time we would meet and he'd update the website, he would have a certain area and he would release certain roads every week as they were getting built out. So customers knew right away when they could turn up and have service available.
Excellent, thank you. And you described, as with the Village of Sherburne, you're building on existing infrastructure, existing capacity that you had for both these projects, and that helped the pilots get started quickly. In a similar vein, we'll go to Dave Wolf from the Development Authority of the North Country. Dave, you can tell us about the projects in Diane and Pitcairn. And as you can see on the map, and I had the opportunity to visit, these are two towns straddling the county line, so you're able to do them as one build. But talk a little bit about the projects, Dave.
Sure. Thanks, Josh, and thanks again for having us. I introduced Bob Durantini also. He's our Director of Outside Plant Engineering and Construction. And hopefully, if there's any questions, he'll probably be the one answering them. So appreciate it. Our goal when we started the project, when it first was introduced to us, was twofold. One, we work very closely. The Development Authority is has primarily been a middle mile company that doesn't sell internet, doesn't sell voice. So we rely on other service providers to work with us. So our goal when we were first introduced to this is we also work very closely with the county planning departments. I see a few of those folks on here. And we wanted to be able to do a project that hit St. Lawrence County and Lewis County. They both had considerable number of unserved people. And so we were able to pick this project that hit two of the counties that we work closely with. One of the goals was to also interconnect into the New York Power Authority's optical ground wire. They happen to have a transmission line. That's that blue line that runs through there, kind of poorly drawn in by me but anyway, that's the route that it takes. And so we were able to interconnect with that line to demonstrate that we could utilize some existing infrastructure capacity to deliver some municipal broadband. And we actually interconnect with them in Messina, come all the way down to Harrisville area here to the town of Pitcairn, connect into our network. We connect into it again in Diana, and then that line continues on down further down to the Krogan area where we also connect back to our network and then can have connectivity. And that allows us to hopefully have in the future, we could utilize that asset, that NIPA asset a little bit more. Real quickly, a couple of the things that we did. It's interesting, I think, that out of the 3 pilot projects, we all did something slightly different. The Development Authority doesn't have our own construction crews. So for us, we work closely with the ConnectALL office, we work closely with NIPA, and we also picked Slick Network Solutions, who has, I don't know, 15 to 20,000 residential last mile customers today. So our operating model is that the Development Authority built and owns the backbone fiber right to the riser pole, but Slick Network Solution builds the drops off of the riser pole into the homes. They install the customer premise equipment, and they manage that customer relationship. So they're our customer. If they have any outages, they refer them to us, and then we'll take care of the fiber network. But if it's an equipment issue, then they take care of it. So some of the things that we learned, and I think that's very different than, Sherburne, they have their own construction crews. They trained them up on fiber and they did a great job, and they're managing that network right into the home. We're managing the network to the riser pole, and Slick is taking it into the home. And Jeff's slightly different. He's managing it into the home, but using, I think, allowing some other providers to do the services as well. So a couple of things we learned because of our operating model was that it was important for us, and this was our second project like this we had done with Slick. So we knew that it was important for us to make sure that our back offices, our operating systems, our provisioning systems, our fiber record keeping systems talked to each other so that we could make sure that we know when there's an outage, hopefully not soon, but in the next 5 years, 10 years, when there's one customer that goes down on the network, that we know where that customer is and how they're doing. It was very important for us to work with the local municipal people. They really know the area and they've been very helpful. By the way, on this map, the red lines are the fiber network. The blue dots are unserved customers. There's more customers than that, but those were all unserved people. And you can see it's a very remote part of the state. The lower right-hand side of that map is that darker green is the Adirondack Park. So we bumped into the Adirondack Park for part of this build. And the internal engineering was a big plus for us. Having our own internal outside plan engineers was very helpful. And you can read about the success. And just real quickly on the right-hand side, you can see on the top picture, that's a transmission tower. That's where we connected to the New York Power Authority's optical ground wire. They bring it down that transmission pole. We spliced into it and connected up, and then we use that transmission system. And the bottom is a fiber hub. You can see that's 1x64 splitters. It's very busy, a lot of fiber in there, but we use that method for our design. And so I'll turn it back over to you, Josh.
And I just want to, I know that Rob you know, those neat bundles, everything very well labeled, and it allows for a very clean handoff where you need to where SLIC comes in, needs to splice from the pole. And what I appreciate about the, you know, Dave, thanks for summarizing the differences of these projects, is that each one of them does allow for a different entity potentially to use the same infrastructure. If it gets to a point where, you know, what is needed is a different private entity, the infrastructure is there to support that, and there doesn't have to be a, you know, tremendous new capital outlay to support that. Even if in the case of these projects in Diana and Pitcairn, you know, you're relying that private ISP to do the drops from the pole. Dave, just start, you know, what can you talk, you mentioned the other project you've done, that was the one in Tupper Lake. You know, that, you know, I think is 5, maybe 7 years ago or so when you started that. Do you remember what the impetus was to get going with a last mile approach to, you know, or getting to the pole from your middle mile infrastructure that you've had for 20+ years?
Yes. Yeah, in that case, the impetus was they had actually developed a broadband committee in the town, and there was only one provider. It was expensive, and the service levels were very poor. The business community in particular were having issues. So there was twofold though on that project. One was to get some more competition for the business community with a network that had some diversity all through the Adirondack Park. And the second one was we did do some wireless so that we could get to all of the users within the town of Tupper Lake. So we were able to provide at least some broadband connectivity to everyone in the town.
And we can bring all the participants back on. I have a few questions for folks, but that's an interesting point, Dave. And there was one question I was asking about integrating wireless components into these networks, and I think that's one of the other benefits of the shared infrastructure, and is that you can leverage the fiber for multiple purposes. Jeff, you mentioned public safety. Mayor Acey, you talked about you know, smart grid types of approaches, and obviously that you know, benefits the community and improves the business case. Just wanted to start by asking, you know, if there's anything particularly surprising that you learned in the course of doing these pilot projects that you think are, you know, helpful things for people to keep in mind as they're considering. Let's start with Mayor Acey and Travis. Anything in particular?
I can't, you know, yeah, I didn't prepare for that question, but I would say that, you know, overall, I mean, just to again continue what you started to say, there's unlimited potential. I mean, there's so much that can be grown from this initial investment. You know, when it comes to smart grid, the emergency services, all those things which are going to be the future for sure. And we put in a lot of extra broadband. I mean, we've got fiber, so it's unlimited. So that's the one thing that excites me. I don't know if it's so much as it's something I've learned, but it excites me. But every day we learn about something else that can be added to this system, and the future is unlimited. It just seems like such a great investment in our infrastructure. I liken it to when we started with electricity in 1905. It's kind of the same thing. You're muted.
Yeah, Travis, if you want to add to that, or
Yep, I want to jump in on that. I had the opportunity to think while turn it down while the mayor was speaking. So some of the lessons learned. One was when we were offering 1 gig service to homes, and people were able to drop their cable TV network. The misunderstanding about what fiber could bring, the ability that people had to watch such a wider variety of programming, or bring wider variety of programming to the home than what Spectrum, for instance, offers. That was one. Secondly, that the public really doesn't understand what internet is. We get calls that my internet is down. Well, no, your internet's not down. The Wi-Fi in your home is down. but people think of Wi-Fi as internet, and it's just one and the same to them. So those were two, I think, and really they boil down to education of the public, but two of the most surprising aspects that I didn't think about going into this.
Yeah, Jeff, are there any lessons or takeaways or anything that surprised you going, looking back?
Yeah, I think really what the one big thing that we found was, and I'm sure Dave kind of has the same thing with Dank, is how important it really gave us new light to our middle mile network. We're extremely happy that we have it in the region, but it really kind of propelled the use and need of it. Without it, Ben can attest, having our upstream backhaul connectivity to Nichols would have been impossible if we didn't have our middle mile network. Ben has done an amazing job of layering on a backbone network on top of our middle mile fiber to enhance, again, that upstream network connectivity. That was one thing we saw as a challenge at the beginning was, we had all these kind of safe checks in place, backup of things, extra components of the equipment, contractor availability, all those things were kind of checked. One thing we found quickly that we needed was really a solid core backbone network. One, to support our initial ISP, but two, to be able to even bring on additional ones. So that was one big thing that I think we saw. And I'll let Ben opine if there's anything else he can add.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I think the one thing that stands out to me is that in the process of us putting in a fiber optic network, we also upgraded rural electric for these customers. Talking with the customers, they would tell me they'd lose power every couple of weeks. Poles would come down, trees would come down. Through the process of getting the pole lines ready and the make-ready process, having contractors out there replacing these poles and doing all of the easement work by cutting the trees back. I've had customers say that power's been the best in years out there as well. So I think that that kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. We put in our fiber optic network, but we also did approximately a $5 million power upgrade that NYSEG thankfully paid a majority of. So it was that's what impressed me about this.
And I do acknowledge the importance of that partnership with the utilities to get these deployments done. Dave, Rob, did you want to share any lessons or takeaways from these projects that you thought were interesting?
You're muted, Bob.
There you go. Maybe to capitalize a little more on what Bennett just started talking about. Three strategically different design plans and philosophies with these three networks. Our particular network, we didn't own a power company. We had to license poles, and our partner for that was National Grid. The folks up at STN, their partner was NYSEG. Sherburne, you guys own your municipal facilities, and we all knew as we progressed through the project how you folks, the other two outfits, were kind of progressing much quicker than we were. And I think for future ConnectALL projects, as you're determining timelines and budgeting and across multiple budget years possibly, we really need to think about who those partners are, what their timelines are for that associated work, the cost of upgrading the network, because Ben is absolutely right. They got a brand new pole line running over there. But some companies operate a little differently when it comes to that. Some of the power companies, they're happy for you to rebuild their pole lines for them. And so you have to be mindful of that, and you've got to watch out for that. That's the first point. The second point is David mentioned the interconnects with the power authority. And I just wanted to expand on that a little bit. Harrisville which is the central office that actually powers both Diana and Pitcairn. That is a pretty remote central office sitting inside of a fire department. Great people to work with. With that interconnect now, we now have survivability and diversity, survivability and structural diversity into that central office from two different locations. We can serve it out of our Lowville central office, which is south about 30 miles, and we can serve that central office feeder out of the Messina central office up towards the St. Lawrence Power Authority's Robert Moses Power Dam. So I would encourage going forward, if there's the ability to actually be able to IRU a couple of strands of fiber from the Power Authority, of which they will do contractually, utilize it. We are waiting for a couple of substations to actually get finally constructed as part of their power upgrade plans. Once that's in place, we will have very large rings throughout the North Country of New York State, providing survivability and diversity. So as you're looking at your design plans and where you want to place the ConnectALL in relation to existing facilities, existing high lines, things like that, just something to consider going forward.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
I was just gonna say, just to add to that, because I saw one of the questions was on make ready costs, just to add to that. Depending on where you are, but if you're planning to do a project, in this case, it was $22,000 a mile for make ready. So that can, we did underestimate that by a bit because but it was a bit of an older area, not a lot of construction going on. So those poles have been there a long, long time and needed to be upgraded, but that added significantly to the project. So.
And I'll just note again, first of all, thank you to the state legislature for explicitly authorizing the New York Power Authority to make its excess fiber capacity available for projects like this, and to NYPA for implementing that in Den and Pitcairn. But also the observation that the motivation of these municipal projects, these public, being driven by public entities like yours, is to think about the other impacts, is to design the network in a way that brings future-proof, resilient ring architecture to remote parts of the state, not just in a way that just for the purpose of dropping in a last mile network, but really supporting the whole region. And really all these projects, I think, exemplify network designs that reflect the broad needs and opportunities of improving conditions across many different areas for each of these communities. I wanted to bring in some other partners that are on this call, because again, we're really seeing this take root in a variety of ways across the state. I want to start with let's start with Melissa Hartman from ERIENet, the executive director of ERIENet. We heard from Southern Tier Network and the Development Authority of the North Country talking about their regional middle mile networks. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing at ERIENet?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much, Josh. So in 2017, Erie County actually decided to take part in a feasibility study to look at an open access municipal network. There were some challenges within our county, specifically in our more rural communities. We have competition issue and we have under and unserved areas, obviously, throughout the county. With COVID, that after the feasibility study, it was paused. But what came out of COVID for us, fortunately, as we're seeing even with today's ConnectALL availability with their funding, is we were able to utilize funding from the county was able to utilize funding to kind of make this dream a reality. So in 2021, $34 million of ARPA funding was devoted to building a middle mile municipal network throughout the county. And we formed an LDC. And so, we, for many reasons, a non-for-profit, but one thing that, we learned, as some of the networks have already said, is, the make ready and all of that. Obviously our costs, I think initially it was around $20 million as the estimated cost for a 400-mile municipal open access network. And today's cost is around $30 million. So we are just in the make ready process now. We're pretty much a lot through that, but as obviously we move through that, some of our network opportunities grow. We are going to be starting the construction phase where we'll start stringing fiber in the next couple of months once obviously the weather's better. But for us, the reality is every municipality in Erie County will have fiber, which is not a reality today. It will connect all the municipal buildings, allowing for redundancy and diversity as been talked about with the other networks in areas that don't currently have it. It will connect our public safety, hospitals, schools, and government buildings as our first phase. And then of course, just as I'm sure all of you on this call have residents who either don't have access to fiber, or have zero competition and high cost to the businesses and to the residents. So we're hoping to bring that down.
Thank you. And David Makar, Executive Director of Dryden Fiber, the town of Dryden, you as a town have gone forward with a municipal network. Could you share your experience?
Sure thing. The town of Dryden started about 8 years ago on a project to bring this to life, and believe about 18 months ago started running the fiber. We're very fortunate that in Dryden we have a public rail trail system that runs across the town, and because the town owns the right of way on the rail trail, we're able to plug in the fiber right on the trail, which instantly eliminates a lot of the dealing with DOT and dealing with NICEAG for poles and for running along the highway. So that's been a big boost for us. We had our first customers joining about a year ago in March, April of last year, and huge demand. Hundreds and hundreds of people are going to our website, drydenfiber.com, are asking for the service, and we have a great team. We did not hire anyone internal at the town of Dryden to do the implementation. We're working with about 5 different subcontractors, each with a specialty, as we build out the network and get us live.
But again, interesting to hear about how you're leveraging that existing asset and how important different rights of way can be, whether it's the poles that Sherburne has or the trailway that Dryden has. Jennifer Tift, who is the Director of Strategic Initiatives with the City of Syracuse. Obviously, Syracuse is a slightly different context. Can you talk about the SurgeLink project?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Josh and ConnectALL for asking me to say a few words. I do think Syracuse is pretty, kind of starkly contrasted to, I think, most of the other examples, because we are talking about a very urban, dense environment, and our focus is on residential connectivity. Like Melissa said from ErieNet, we first really had the ability from a financial perspective to really try to attack the digital divide issue because of the funding that came out of the pandemic. So, I think I think everyone probably on this call always sort of recognized there was a problem in a lot of our smaller communities. And I think most folks are probably aware, Syracuse is actually the 5th largest city in the state of New York, right in the center of the state, just under 150,000 people. We have the unfortunate distinction of having one of the poorest populations, not just in the state of New York, but in the country, which is something we work actively on to try to, improve the economic conditions of all of our residents, and to do that in a very inclusive way. So, really when we had the ability through some of our ARPA funds to start to work on connecting residents to high-speed internet, we of course looked at it. We actually did consider a much more kind of fiber-intensive, fiber-to-the-home approach. We decided that it was in the best interest of our community to actually use more of a fixed wireless and delivery approach for residents, in particular because we're talking about a very dense urban environment with a lot of old physical infrastructure. And we wanted to get residents connected very, very quickly. So that was really one of, I think, the big differentiators. We really started building our network, which does, certainly use fiber for backhaul, and really developed those fixed wireless POPs. I think within 2 months, we were offering service to residents. So very, quick speed to market, which was pretty important to us. Just a couple of, kind of quick data points just to give people context. We launched the pilot and we call our service Surge Link. It's targeted on 10 or 11 census tracts. The average income for those census tracts is about $27,000. We are covering an area that includes about 8,400 households. And we're shooting for a take rate of 25 to 30% of that. Again, kind of acknowledging that, we're trying to basically serve folks who are functionally unserved. They're unserved because of the affordability issue. We do outsource the operations of our network. And so our internet service provider, that's managing all aspects of customer onboarding and retention, does participate in the Affordable Connectivity Program. So that was a really important aspect of this. Of course, we were very upfront with everyone when we started this endeavor that at that point, we knew the ACP might go away. Now that's looking, unfortunately, like it's more and more of a reality for all of us. We were able to work with our Common Council, thankfully, to allocate a certain amount of ARPA funding to be able to offer a local subsidy in case the ACP does go away. So, if that does happen in April, we're actually prepared to do that, where we will continue to provide high-speed internet to SurgeLink customers for $10 a month out of pocket, which we're really, really proud about. And again, I think that makes a big difference when we're talking about the specific scenarios around urban, underrepresented, economically disadvantaged populations. And so, certainly happy to share more. Folks can message me offline. I'm happy to share my email address. But again, really happy to share some of our story. But interesting to see the contrast between all of the solutions that we're considering across the state as we're dealing with different types of populations and different types of geographies and demographics. So very happy to share my story.
And initial capabilities of the local government or regional partners. Can we bring our pilot projects on? Again, I think we just we wanted to see how this feels like a groundswell, but also building on capability going back 8 years, 20 years. That diversity was a challenge for us trying to design a grant program, but we think we've done it, reflecting and respecting the different approaches and among our local partners. One question we have up here is about the ongoing sustainability of these projects and whether the user fees are going to cover those costs. Jeff, you mentioned that you're reinvesting the revenue to expand the network. Can you, but I'd love for each of you to answer this question about whether the networks are sustainable with the revenue you're generating.
Yeah, that's a great question. Everything we do at STN, we always ask, is this going to be sustainable? Even if we got 100% build cost paid for, unless it's sustainable on a take rate or a revenue stream on the middle mile that we could, that we feel comfortable with, we won't do the project. And if that's not the case. So in this example, we looked at an approximate 25% take rate that would minimally cover our operations. We know that things go up and down, and we are looking at a year to 2 years into operation, going back and looking at what our true operational cost is. But we had a model that had an average per mile operational cost, and then we looked at what that revenue would need to be to offset that. And we came out to about 25%. I'll have Ben kind of opine. I think we've had, with the wind and ice storms that we've had at the beginning of this year, we had a little bit of a hit to get some drops replaced. But the backbone has been pretty good. Really comes down to, again, those drops. drop costs. So I'll let Ben.
Well, sorry, just because we're short on time, just Dank, you have it worked out where it's essentially a revenue share with Slick. Is that how you've arranged it? So in terms of the sustainability?
Yes, ours is a revenue share, and so but same as Jeff, though, we do first initially look to see if we think we can get enough revenue from the project, and so there fortunately is a few other things in the area that we wanted to do, and so there's some revenue from that, but for sustainability and for low cost of entry for the last mile provider, we did a revenue share. So we built it, and then we get a portion of the revenue that is generated from the project. But like Jeff said, we do look at this beforehand and make sure that we can at least generate enough revenue to cover our costs.
And Mayor Acey or Travis, go ahead.
I'll take a shot at it. So I think, with experience with an electric utility, I mean, when I apply that rate making methodology, it looks like, this should be very easy to sustain financially. We're spreading it out over a wide number of customers. Our costs are pretty much nil at this point. We're looking at probably increasing revenue at some point with other services that we'll be able to provide on our network. So I see it nothing but, I see green pastures ahead in that regard. However, I want to say one thing is that trees grow, and we do know that vegetation management becomes an issue for at least our electric utility, and it's going to be an issue here as well. So keep that in the back of your mind.
One thing I'll just note as we're wrapping up is we did see that the scale of the infrastructure supports sustainability, and so I think we've seen that that can be helpful. That growing or having other components of the network, or in the case of STN or DANK, having a larger footprint supports I think the ongoing sustainability of the effort, as opposed to just going from zero can be a challenge. I know we're at time. Again, if some of you can stay on, we can keep getting into some Q&A, but I do just want to wrap up with one note about upcoming forums, if we bring up that slide, because we have webinars coming up on our broadband challenge process. This is critical for identifying the unserved and underserved locations in the state. Those will be March 21st for different partners. Please look there and go now to check out our challenge platform at register.broadband.ny.gov. Thank you again. We don't have time to list all the people who participated today, but we'll share these slides, we'll share the video. You see some contact information if you want to follow up or contact us, and we can put you in touch. And again, if we want to stay on, we can get to a few more questions and answers. And thank you to everybody who joined us today. So let's see, I want to know actually, let's see, what question, did we talk about what it actually cost on a per mile basis? Jim, I think that was you got one answer to that, Jim, right? Which was 22,000 a mile in make ready. Was that one of the metrics that we had?
Yeah, Dave Wolf shared that from Dank's project.
Does anybody else want to share any cost numbers?
Yeah, that's actually right in line with us. We're about 20,000 a mile for make ready. That included the application process as well.
Great. Thanks, Ben.
And Beth, you asked a question about the relationship to the local ISP market. One of the things I think that's interesting about these two different models is FiberCom and FiberSpark. So Slick was already operating in partnership with Dank in the area, and they responded to an RFP that you did at an earlier point. But FiberCom and FiberSpark, they're connecting to the network, not necessarily right in the town, right? So how does it technically work for an ISP to join the open access models that you have in Sherburne and Nichols?
Yeah, so we are renting space at 109 South Warren Street in Syracuse. We're renting a half a rack or a quarter rack there. We have a switch, and we have a redundant path from Syracuse to Sherburne. The ISPs are responsible to get to 109 South Warren Street, and then Westelcom takes care of the cross connect there at Syracuse to plug into our switch. that brings their presence right directly here into Sherburne. And then through the magic of electronics and software, that puts both of those ISPs right on our network, right to the homes of our customers. And and we have a consultant entry point that helps with the programming and the development of that software to do that.
And just to hammer on that point for people, and again, I got to visit that data center with you. Really, it's really helpful. Could you just estimate, anybody have a sense of what it would cost for if each individual ISP had to go that route themselves, or get that connection from West Telecom from Syracuse to Sherburne, what that would look like if each one of them had to do it individually to get to your town versus just being in that, central presence in Syracuse?
So Josh, are you asking what the cost of that interconnection from Syracuse to Sherburne is?
Yeah, essentially, if each one of them had to do it separately, how likely is it that you'd have two ISPs, showing up in town if they each had to get from, all they have to do right now is get to Syracuse, right? Or be in Syracuse in that data center. But if they had to get themselves all the way to your town, what would that look like in terms of, cost? Any sense?
It's more complicated than that because they have to have a network to run on when it comes to distribution. So the likelihood is zero because they wouldn't invest on, additional fiber on the poles as well as the middle mile. So, the chances of that happening are nil to zero.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
And Ben, I see you nodding your head too. Oh, go ahead.
Josh, I was just going to share, it would depend on the size of the pipe and where where they were coming from, but anywhere from, could be 1,000 a month to 10,000 a month.
Yeah, and to the mayor's point, like that's just to show up in town before they even have a network to distribute on. But Ben, you were nodding your head, I think, about that point. Could you just share a little bit about the benefits of open access?
Yeah, so I take that one personally. We had a couple ISPs, some of the larger ones in the area. They were ready to play ball. Unfortunately, when it came to open access, they said they don't want to be open access. It was them or bust. So of course we did not go with them. But getting ISPs to these rural areas is a real challenge. We were lucky that our ISP that we partnered with, FiberSpark, they're locally based out of Ithaca. STN has existing plant fiber in Ithaca. So we were able to work with them to jump on our existing middle mile network to get that IP connectivity down to Nichols. Without that, I don't believe FiberSpark would have been able to. They would have had to lease fiber from another fiber carrier. Kind of that price point that Jim was talking about earlier, probably that $5,000 to $7,000 a month just to get out there. And that doesn't include all the equipment and back end equipment that's needed to provide the service to the customers.
The difference between having a backhaul network to 109 South Warren, like Dank does, like STN does, which Sherburne does not have. Sherburne will have to pay that backhaul from another carrier, First Light or somebody like that, to get out of 109 and bring it down to Sherburne. And there's your $3,000 to $5,000 a month just for that pipe. And then you tack on top of that the ISP cost. So just to get it into their central office at the municipal building.
We also had a question about outreach. So what has it been looking like in terms of getting customers onto the network? How have you advertised this and made people aware of it? And what does that look like in terms of making sure that everybody's aware and can sign up?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. So we looked at what marketing worked best. We tried a variety of things, and the ones that I can go through them all, but the ones that worked best were really two things: the community open house events, where any question was open, and it was a very open public forum and very well received. We had packed houses of people coming to see where we were. That was great. And funny enough, yard signs were, when you drove down the main drag in Nichols, it was yard sign. It was like you had to figure out, everybody was like, I had to figure it out. I kept just driving past yard signs. So those were our two biggest ones. The other thing that we did was we started nicholsfiber.com that had all the updates on where it was available. You can sign up for interest, look at the ISPs, just a nice, clean, simple page where people get information.
And I don't know if Dave or our other partners are still on, but if you wanted to answer this question as well.
Well, it's very similar. In our case, Slick does most of the advertising because they're the actual customer interface, but they say that the yard signs are the most the best way to go. And then second is, just like Jeff said, some local, you don't want to set up, in their case, they don't like to set up a separate community event, but they like to participate in any community event and get a booth and set it up so that they can make people aware. And then the third thing is having a really good website that they can log into and just see the map visually.
Mayor?
I was just gonna say word of mouth was in a rural area, which is unlike, the window that you're sitting in front of. I mean, word of mouth travels pretty quickly around here. That was very effective actually, because people were starting to talk to their neighbors. And Travis brought it up earlier, that one of the hardest things was teaching some of the older folks, the senior citizens, about streaming, because, they're used to their cable packages. We thought about maybe reaching out to Office for the Aging to go out and help people, learn about streaming, because, in a lot of cases it saved them $100 a month in cost. So it was a big deal. Once they got it, but it was a big change.
And I actually think that sort of, peer conversation is critical in every community. Like you said, once they got it, and I'm sure once they see neighbors or people they talk to, they're like, oh, you're doing it this way, maybe I can do it this way, is critical for really every
Absolutely.
population group. And then lastly, outreach to the ISPs. How did you go about identifying, selecting, and attracting those ISPs to the project? Dave, why don't you start? Because I know you had done it through an ISP and you selected one, right?
Right, we did it through an IFB or for a bid or an RFP actually, and we selected one, and it was a big piece of the scoring was much more so. It was a little less on price and more so on their capabilities within that footprint for having technicians and having the ability to respond quickly. And so we had 4 respondents to that, surprisingly, and we selected one. So that's how we did it.
I'll jump in. The ConnectALL office for the pilot was really instrumental in helping Sherburne identify ISPs. They knew the ISPs in New York State. We talked to many of them. The open access model that we have was a bit of a curveball for those ISPs because Sherburne gets a portion of that monthly cost for the O&M, and ISP gets only the service end of it. So they saw that as a problem. Also, it has to be managed, but there is this difficult aspect of where if a customer has a problem, who is responsible for what? So some of the ISPs were not interested in our model because of that. One of our ISPs is actually located in Idaho. They're familiar with EntraPoint's open access system. They're in Almond, Idaho, and Mount Hope, Idaho. Very familiar with it, and they're operating on our system. They're located in Idaho, and they're an ISP in Sherburne. They use a Cogent link to get from Idaho into Syracuse, and then they jump onto our switch and come into Sherburne. One of the benefits of having the ISP out of Idaho is they're 2 hours. They're 2 hours behind us. So folks need to talk to a real human being at an ISP. They're open until 7 o'clock. If you get in the morning, you have a problem with them, well, they're not up yet. So that is a downside, but thank you.
But yeah, that's but just to note that it is a different type of company in the market that would operate on that open access model, but they do exist, and it's a growing segment because open access is a growing sector of the internet service, and I think we want to see that sector grow and thrive along with traditional models or other examples that we have in the state. Jeff and Ben.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, the good news was FiberSpark. We've been talking to FiberSpark for a number of years. They started leveraging our middle mile network for some business connectivity. So we already had an existing relationship with them. One thing we did find is with other potential ISPs that the size of the amount of subscribers just wasn't in their wheelhouse to initially join on. But they're interested as we grow and and really they wanted to see, how the pilot went. And so I know we're going to be adding additional ISPs in the future. And hopefully if we grow and have a larger scale, that'll attract more ISPs as well.
Mm-hmm. And then, I know that for all of you, you've been thinking about these projects for a while, and that was one of the reasons why it made sense for you to be pilot projects. But we did just get a question of how much time did it take for these projects from start to finish, finish in terms of advanced planning, community engagement, construction, et cetera, and then, scaling to the take rate that you've gotten to at this point. Just any general thoughts on, how that time frame?
It's like 18 months to 2 years, depending on the make ready, really. I would say that's been our experience. And we did give the make ready cost, total cost in this case was close to 55,000 per mile, a little bit on the high side for our builds, but it was an area that was pretty heavy make ready. So
I would add also that I think a lot of it depends on, there's a lot of consultants in this industry, and I think that's very important that you pick the right consultant. And I think I would scrutinize, whoever I chose to, work for me or direct me if I were, a municipality looking to start up a project, because I think there's different bias depending on who the consultant is. So I think you really have to, kind of take a deep dive on what they're advocating for service and how they want to see connectivity.
Yeah, the timing was really crucial for STN's project. We were the last of the pilots to be engaged, and we were, one of the first ones to get customers up, and that was really just heads down, moving forward, and having the partners locally that allowed us to do that. Having the fire station be open to being our POP and letting us in quickly and getting equipment up and fiber pulled in. Having the DPW allow us to utilize during the summer months storage that they normally would use for winter, for 6 months to store equipment. So really having to be creative on the timing, and you have to be flexible. Things are not going to go as smooth as you think they are. You have to be nimble to change course a little bit, work on one area while you're waiting on another that wasn't in the project plan, but it's ready to go, you go work on it. And having the contractors be upfront, knowing that, listen, this is going to be a variable project. We're going to do things when available, but we need you to be flexible as well. And just that general understanding is key.
Well, again, I want to thank you all for your time. Thank everybody who joined us and, stayed on for this bonus round Q&A. And again, just applaud the pilot efforts and our partners at NYPA, for getting these done, exceeding the number of passings we initially had hoped to achieve, keeping it under budget, and delivering these. And then for all of you for just being in close communication with us, so we could learn from what you've done. As we designed the municipal infrastructure program. And again, thank you to everyone who's helped stand that up. And we look forward to reviewing applications after Friday. And thank you all who joined us today. And thank you to Otho Kerr and William Farber for their time, as well as Dave Makar, Jennifer Tift, and Melissa Hartman. And look forward to seeing the next phase of all of these projects and how this continues to grow and blossom across the state. And you can go to our website for more information. We'll be sharing out copies of this forum, And we look forward to bringing you more forums in the future to learn about how broadband is thriving across the state. Thank you very much and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, thank you for putting this on, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
You.